Either ancient Egyptians were far older or far more advanced than we were ever taught in school, and I strongly suspect that the answer is both. Take a look at these photos here, many of which I utilized in a prior video about evidence that suggests that ancient Egyptians had some sort of lost ancient high technology, such as various stones that many have suggested are evidence of ancient machining or saw cutting technology. In fact, many of these photos that you're looking at here were taken by Brian Forrester, who I'll mention in just a moment. Now, in my prior video, I outlined the various tools that Egyptologists and archaeologists have stated that the dynastic Egyptians had, such as dolerite stone hammers as well as bronze chisels, which, when you consider the most scale of hardness and stones such as basalt, rose granite, and quartzite, which are found throughout Egypt, that there's no possible way that those types of tools could have cut and carved stones of this level of hardness. Now, in that video, I failed to address the most common rebuttal that I received, which is that, look, no, you do not need advanced technology to cut and carve these stones. In fact, you can utilize primitive methods such as string, water, and sand, and even copper to cut through these stones. In fact, there's videos on YouTube where you can see people do this, where people can cut and carve these stones, or even individuals that use primitive methods to move stones that are several tons in weight, and they're able to do it all by themselves through very simple primitive methods. However, if we are to agree that these primitive methods were utilized to cut and carve these stones throughout ancient Egypt, then that alone completely debunks the time frame narrative as outlined by Egyptologists, archaeologists, and historians, because it simply does not compute. When you consider just how long it takes to cut and carve stones with these primitive methods, it does not add up. In fact, people have even suggested that if these are the methods that were utilized, and if we had every single Egyptian in ancient times working on these things 24/7, they'd probably still be working on them today. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. In fact, what I can say is that it's impossible for anyone to actually estimate how long it took to accomplish these various works, whether it's the cut and carved stones utilized in the pyramids, stone statues, or other structures found throughout ancient Egypt. And the reason is because we keep finding new stuff. In fact, in just the last 2 months alone, there have been multiple discoveries in Egypt that have made international headlines throughout mainstream media outlets around the world. One of which was the discovery of a massive stone statue found underground, or even more interesting, the discovery of an entirely new pyramid that is in ruins and buried under the desert within Egypt. I mean, regardless of the debate of how pyramids were constructed, I think we could all agree that they were certainly built to last. So what on earth happened to that pyramid to put it into ruins? How was it destroyed? I mean, was it so old that it just started falling apart? I mean, for real, how many hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years would it take for that to happen? And if it was destroyed, how and who or what did that? When you take a moment just to reflect on that, it raises some really interesting questions. But the point that I'm making here is that they keep finding new evidence. They keep finding new cut stones, and that when you consider all of ancient Egypt combined, there are tens of millions of cut stones, statues, and structures found throughout, that there's no possible way that these primitive methods could have accomplished all of these works anywhere near the period of time as outlined in our history textbooks, which either suggests that ancient Egyptians and human civilization is far older than we were taught in school, or we are more advanced, or both. I mean, we already have enough evidence to conclude that ancient humans were significantly older than we were taught. I mean, take the case of the Great Sphinx, which there is such significant water erosion around the limestone bedrock enclosure of the Sphinx. In fact, more than 200 professional geologists from around the world have visited the Great Sphinx and said, yes, this water erosion is without a doubt the result of tens of thousands of years of heavy rainflow. And the last time the Nile Delta received that type of rainfall was at least 7,000 years ago, which is nearly double the age as outlined by historians and Egyptologists of the age of the Great Sphinx. So it doesn't add up. And it's even worth mentioning that Dr. Robert Schoch, geologist from Boston University, has told his peers that this evidence of water erosion is so significant that it could be 100,000 years old. But let me discuss the primitive methods of cutting these stones another step further. Take, for example, the 100-ton stone boxes, and there's nearly 3 dozen of them, found at the Serapeum in Egypt. They are leveled down to within 2/10,000ths of an inch, which is comparable to modern technology. And when you consider not just these stone boxes, but say the stone box found at Elephantine Island, which has corners that are so detailed that they could not be done in modern times without diamond bit drills. And modern day stonemasons have visited these sites and looked at these works and have stated that there's no possible way that string or copper or bronze or sand could have machine cut these corners down to what we see today, that there's clearly more to the story than what we've been told. And even take into consideration the unfinished obelisk, more than 1,200 tons in weight, has incredible scoop marks carved out of solid rose granite. And these same scoop marks are found on the underside of it, which completely contradicts the ability to utilize stone dolerite hammers at the angle at which these scoop marks are found. That clearly, well, there's just more to the story than rose granite being pounded away. Or even that string and sand and water was used to slowly carve it out. When you look at the concaves of not just the stone carved out of the obelisk, but even other stones found throughout ancient Egypt, or even drill holes, you have to start asking real questions, which is, how did they do this? And of course, I must mention that these drill holes found throughout ancient Egypt, as well as other megalithic sites around multiple continents around the world, could have been done with primitive methods, as you see here. But it brings me to the case of, say, the Colossi of Memnon. Two statues which are 60 feet in height each, which individually are 720 tons, which were carved out of one solid piece of quartzite each. But how in the world could have the primitive methods that are suggested by Egyptologists and others could have cut and carved something on this scale? I mean, take a look at just how small these people are in comparison to this statue. And that doesn't even consider just what it took to move the Colossi of Memnon. I mean, in modern times, when the Los Angeles County Museum of the Arts wanted to move a 340-ton stone block, which is less than half the weight of each of the individual Colossi of Memnon, they had to custom build an Emmett International truck, which was nearly 300 feet long and had 196 wheels. It took almost a week to move a stone block just over 100 miles. And the Colossi of Memnon are made out of quartzite. And the closest area in the region where they could find quartzite to the site that they're at is nearly 400 miles away. So how did the ancient Egyptians, how in the world were they able to move something so big? For some reason, I really doubt that they used logs and rollers to move it that far of a distance for something that was so massive and so heavy. Something that was estimated to have been 1,000 tons prior to have been cut and carved. To bring this all to a close, what we were taught in school and what they're still teaching in the textbooks today involving ancient human civilization has been debunked. We were far older and far more advanced than we ever thought possible. And I have many other videos that outline this. Now let me real quick mention that all the photos that you've seen in this presentation I sourced from Google Images. However, I do recognize several of them from originating from the works of Brian Forster. Check out his YouTube channel, subscribe to him, like his videos, because this gentleman is going throughout the world to various megalithic sites and showing you firsthand evidence on camera that things that you've never seen before, including many of the photos that you've seen here before and many, many other things. And he also has a website, hiddenincatours.com. So without a doubt, definitely go check him out. Anyways, guys, I'll leave it at that. I'm Jimmy. This is Bright Insight. Like and subscribe. Leave me a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are. And I have many videos to come on a whole wide variety of topics. Take care, everybody.